The moment a narcissist goes silent, your nervous system panics. But theirs doesn't. Silence doesn't hurt them, it feeds them. Because while you're asking, "What did I do wrong?" they're already planning what comes next, and it's never about peace. If this sounds painfully familiar, pause for a moment, take a breath. And if this content resonates, stay with me, because understanding this pattern is how you stop being trapped by it. When a narcissist goes silent, it is never accidental, impulsive, or the result of being overwhelmed by emotions in the way most people experience overwhelm. This silence is calculated, deliberate, and purposeful. It is chosen because it works. Narcissists learn very early that silence creates discomfort, anxiety, and self-doubt in others, and they use it as a psychological lever. Instead of communicating, explaining, or resolving conflict, they withdraw presence, attention, and emotional availability to regain control. Silence becomes a tool to punish, destabilize, and dominate without having to say a single word. What makes this strategy so effective is that humans are wired for connection. When communication suddenly stops, the nervous system interprets it as a threat. The person on the receiving end starts scanning their memory, replaying conversations, searching for mistakes, and taking responsibility for the emotional rupture, even when they did nothing wrong. This internal chaos is exactly what the narcissist anticipates. The silence shifts the focus entirely onto you while absolving them of accountability. They do not go silent to reflect, heal, or calm down. They go silent to force you into emotional labor on their behalf. During this period, they often feel powerful, regulated, and in control because the imbalance works in their favor. The more confused or anxious you become, the more validated they feel in their ability to control the dynamic. Silence also allows them to avoid vulnerability. Communicating requires accountability, empathy, and the risk of being exposed, and those are things narcissists actively avoid. Silence protects their ego while simultaneously provoking a reaction from you. It also gives them time to decide their next move based on how you respond. If you reach out repeatedly, apologize, or plead for clarity, they learn that silence is an effective weapon. If you remain calm and disengaged, it disrupts their expectation and creates internal discomfort for them instead. The key detail is that narcissistic silence is not absence, it is presence without visibility. They are emotionally engaged in the outcome, watching closely, tracking your behavior, and waiting for proof that their strategy is working. Silence in this context is not empty space. It is an act of control unfolding quietly in real time. When a narcissist goes silent, the goal is not distance, space, or emotional regulation, it is destabilization. This silence is designed to activate your anxiety and keep your mind in a constant state of uncertainty. Human beings naturally seek closure and clarity, and the sudden withdrawal of communication creates a psychological vacuum. Your brain rushes to fill that gap with questions, assumptions, and self-blame. You start wondering what you said, how you sounded, whether you overreacted, or if you misunderstood everything. This internal spiral is not accidental. The narcissist understands, often intuitively, that confusion weakens your sense of self and shifts the focus away from their behavior. Instead of questioning their actions, you begin questioning your worth, your perception, and your emotional responses. The silence becomes a mirror that reflects your insecurities back at you. While you are trying to stabilize yourself, they are not distressed in the same way. They experience the silence as a form of control, a pause that allows them to feel superior and unchallenged. Your discomfort reassures them that they still matter, that they still have emotional impact. This destabilization also increases the likelihood that you will reach out. When anxiety rises, people seek relief, and the fastest relief appears to be reconnecting, even if that means apologizing for things you didn't do or minimizing your own needs. The narcissist benefits from this because it reverses the power dynamic. They no longer have to explain or repair anything because your distress does that work for them. Over time, repeated exposure to this pattern can erode your confidence and emotional stability. You may start anticipating silence and adjusting your behavior to avoid it, walking on eggshells, suppressing your feelings, and prioritizing their comfort over your own. The silence trains you to self-abandon in order to preserve the connection. That is the deeper impact of this tactic. It is not just about the moment of withdrawal, but about conditioning you to fear disconnection so intensely that you lose touch with your own emotional truth. When a narcissist goes silent, it is often mistaken for emotional overwhelm, hurt feelings, or a need for space, but in reality, it is a method of control. Silence allows them to dominate the emotional landscape without engaging in direct conflict. By withdrawing communication, they place themselves in a position of power where they decide when, how, and if connection resumes. You are left waiting, guessing, and adjusting while they hold the authority over the relationship's emotional rhythm. This imbalance is intentional. Control for a narcissist is not always loud or aggressive. It is often quiet, subtle, and deeply destabilizing. Silence forces you into a reactive position where your emotions are shaped by their absence. They know that most people will interpret silence as rejection or disapproval, and that interpretation creates compliance. You may soften your boundaries, suppress your needs, or abandon valid concerns just to restore contact. In this way, silence becomes a form of coercion. They do not need to argue, justify themselves, or take responsibility, because the silence itself pressures you to self-correct. This tactic also protects their fragile self-image. If they were to communicate, they might be challenged, exposed, or required to acknowledge harm. Silence eliminates that risk. It allows them to avoid accountability while still maintaining dominance. What makes this especially powerful is that it is socially ambiguous. From the outside, silence can look like maturity, restraint, or self-control, which makes it harder for you to name what is happening or seek validation. Internally, however, the impact is heavy. You feel unseen, dismissed, and emotionally erased. Over time, this dynamic can condition you to accept emotional deprivation as normal. You may begin to equate love with uncertainty and connection with anxiety. The narcissist, meanwhile, experiences a sense of regulation through control. Your discomfort reassures them that they matter and that the bond still revolves around them. Silence in this context is not a passive absence of communication. It is an active strategy that reinforces their power by keeping you emotionally off balance and dependent. When a narcissist goes silent, it does not mean they have emotionally checked out or stopped paying attention. In many cases, they are observing more closely than ever. The silence creates distance, but it also creates a vantage point. From that position, they monitor your reactions, your emotional shifts, and your attempts to reconnect. They notice whether you reach out first, how quickly you do it, and what tone you use. Every message, every apology, every expression of confusion becomes information. This observation allows them to assess how much influence they still have over you. If you appear anxious, apologetic, or eager to restore harmony, it confirms that the silence is working. This reinforces their sense of control and encourages them to use the tactic again in the future. During this period, they often feel emotionally regulated and even calm because the power dynamic favors them. They are not experiencing the same distress you are. Instead, they feel validated by your reaction, seeing it as proof of their importance. This is why the silence can feel so one-sided and cruel. You are emotionally activated while they are emotionally detached, yet still invested in the outcome. Their attention is not focused on understanding you or repairing the relationship. It is focused on measuring compliance. Silence gives them time to decide what move will benefit them most next. They may plan a dramatic return, a casual message, or a subtle test to see if you are still available. This period is not empty for them. It is strategic. They are emotionally present in the sense that they are tracking and evaluating, but absent in the sense that they refuse to offer reassurance, clarity, or empathy. This creates a painful paradox for the person on the receiving end. You feel abandoned, yet somehow still watched. Over time, this dynamic can make you hyper-aware of your own behavior, constantly wondering how it will be interpreted. That hypervigilance keeps you emotionally tethered to them, even in their absence, which is exactly what the silence is designed to accomplish. When a narcissist goes silent, your reaction becomes the deciding factor in what happens next. The silence itself is not the end goal, it is a test. They are looking to see whether you will chase, explain, apologize, or emotionally collapse. Each of these responses communicates vulnerability and availability. If you rush to fix the silence, you teach them that withdrawing attention is an effective way to regain control and extract reassurance. Over time, this reinforces the cycle because they now know exactly how to destabilize you whenever they feel challenged, criticized, or ignored. Your reaction also shapes how they perceive your boundaries. If you tolerate the silence without question, they may interpret it as permission to emotionally neglect you. If you overfunction to restore connection, they learn that you will abandon your needs to maintain the relationship. The narcissist adapts quickly to whatever response gives them the most power. This is why silence is often followed by a sudden return that feels confusing or intense. If you reacted strongly, they may come back with affection, charm, or validation to hook you again. If you appeared calm and detached, they may escalate with guilt, blame, or provocation to regain emotional leverage. What they cannot tolerate is irrelevance. A lack of reaction disrupts the dynamic entirely. When you do not chase or self-blame, the silence loses its function. It no longer delivers the emotional payoff they expect. This can make them restless or irritated because the tactic that once worked is no longer effective. The most important detail is that your reaction is not just emotional, it is instructional. It teaches them how to treat you. Repeated patterns of response shape the long-term dynamic of the relationship. Over time, consistently responding with anxiety or self-erasure trains them to see you as controllable. Responding with emotional neutrality and self-respect, on the other hand, weakens their ability to manipulate the situation. The silence then becomes less powerful, not because they change, but because you do. When a narcissist goes silent, it is often not a final withdrawal, but a precursor to what comes next, which is usually a return designed to reassert control. This silence creates the setup for hoovering or punishment, depending entirely on how you responded during the absence. If you appeared distressed, apologetic, or eager to reconnect, the narcissist may re-enter with warmth, charm, or sudden affection. This return can feel relieving, even intoxicating, because it ends the anxiety created by the silence. That relief becomes reinforcing. Your nervous system learns that enduring emotional pain leads to temporary closeness, which deepens the bond and makes the cycle harder to break. The narcissist benefits because they never had to take responsibility for the rupture. Their return alone feels like resolution, even though nothing was actually repaired. In other cases, the silence is followed by punishment rather than charm. If you asserted boundaries, questioned their behavior, or did not react in the way they wanted, they may return with coldness, criticism, or passive aggression. This communicates a clear message that independence or self-respect comes at a cost. The unpredictability of these outcomes keeps you emotionally off balance. You never know which version of them will return, so you become hyper-attuned to their moods and signals. This unpredictability strengthens the trauma bond. The silence also gives them plausible deniability. When they return, they may minimize the impact of their disappearance, accuse you of overreacting, or frame themselves as the injured party. This further distorts your perception of reality and makes you doubt your emotional experience. The key point is that silence is not an isolated behavior. It is part of a larger cycle. It creates emotional hunger, and the return exploits that hunger. Over time, this pattern conditions you to tolerate emotional deprivation in exchange for intermittent connection. The narcissist learns that they can disappear without consequence and return on their own terms. This dynamic erodes trust, safety, and stability, replacing them with anxiety and anticipation. The silence sets the stage, and what follows is almost always designed to pull you back into a familiar pattern where they hold the power and you are left adapting to whatever version of them shows up next. When a narcissist goes silent, there's often a hidden emotional payoff happening beneath the surface. They derive a sense of power and validation from knowing that their absence is affecting you. The silence becomes proof that they matter, that they can still evoke an emotional response without doing anything at all. For someone who relies on external validation to regulate their sense of self, this is deeply gratifying. Your anxiety, confusion, or distress reassures them that they are significant and central in your emotional world. This dynamic allows them to feel powerful without having to engage, explain, or connect authentically. The silence becomes a way to dominate from a distance. They may feel calm, even superior, during this period because the imbalance reinforces their self-image. While you are emotionally activated, they experience a sense of control and relief. This emotional asymmetry is a core feature of narcissistic dynamics. They regulate themselves by dysregulating others. The more unsettled you feel, the more stabilized they become. Silence also allows them to avoid feelings of vulnerability or shame. Instead of confronting discomfort or accountability, they shift the emotional burden onto you. You carry the uncertainty while they carry the power. Over time, this pattern can make you feel invisible, unimportant, or easily discarded, even though their behavior is driven by their need for validation rather than your worth. The cruelty of the silence lies in its one-sidedness. There is no mutual pause, no shared understanding, only an imbalance where one person is left emotionally stranded while the other feels in control. This is why the silence can feel so painful and destabilizing. It is not just the absence of communication, it is the presence of manipulation. The narcissist is emotionally rewarded by your reaction, and that reward reinforces the behavior. Each time the silence succeeds in provoking distress, it strengthens their belief that this tactic works. The dynamic continues not because they are unaware of the impact, but because the impact itself is what sustains their sense of power and importance. When a narcissist goes silent, the most disruptive response is not confrontation, explanation, or emotional collapse, it is disengagement. Silence from them is meant to provoke a reaction, and when that reaction does not come, the entire strategy loses its effectiveness. Narcissists depend on emotional feedback to confirm their sense of relevance and control. When you stop reacting, stop chasing, and stop internalizing the silence as a reflection of your worth, the dynamic begins to shift. This does not mean suppressing emotions or pretending it does not hurt. It means choosing not to perform your pain for someone who uses it against you. Emotional disengagement removes the reward. Without anxiety, apologies, or pursuit, the silence no longer produces power. This can create discomfort for the narcissist because they are no longer able to regulate themselves through your distress. They may attempt to escalate by reappearing suddenly, provoking guilt, or rewriting the narrative to pull you back in. This escalation is not evidence that you did something wrong. It is evidence that the old tactic stopped working. Disengagement also allows you to reconnect with your own internal stability. Instead of scanning for their return, you begin to refocus on your own needs, routines, and emotional truth. This breaks the conditioning that taught you to equate connection with anxiety. Over time, the silence becomes less frightening because you no longer interpret it as abandonment or punishment. You recognize it for what it is, a manipulation designed to create imbalance. The power of disengagement lies in consistency. One calm response may confuse them, but sustained emotional neutrality changes the pattern. You are no longer participating in the cycle, and without participation, the cycle weakens. This does not change the narcissist, but it changes your position. You move from being controlled by their silence to being grounded in your own emotional autonomy. And that shift is what ultimately protects you